All right, good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday, May 9th Committee of the Whole meeting for Grand Blanc Township. Mr. Guzak, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to all of our residents and guests this evening, and we'll call the meeting to order with approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there support? Support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, we will move into, we have our public comment. So, is there anybody that would like to make a comment? We'll start on the left side of the room here. Mr. Bush? No? Mr. Erd? Good evening.
Good evening. Ed Ert, 7212 Porter Road. Bob, I won't mess this up, I hope.
We thought that was your presentation.
I just, I'll get off some of the subjects I usually talk about. But anyhow, it's Walmart parking lot, and I've spoken to several of you people about this before. Happened to notice a lot of trucks parked in there again over the weekend. And I guess I want to bring this to the board's attention. I've brought it to the attention of other members here before. There's a truck called Royal on the side of it. Those Royal tractors are parked. There were 7 of them parked in the Walmart parking lot. And if you go over on Dort Highway and Reed Road, where that storage place is or business, there are trailers. There are 7 trailers parked there. I've seen this many a times.
I'm sorry, like
Trailers with Royal
trailers.
written on the side of them are at that warehousing unit at Reed Road and Dort Highway. And the tractors sit in Walmart parking lot. I just don't get it. Maybe we can do something about that. They gotta be hooking them back up on Monday morning. So it's really getting bad over there. There's a lot of trucks. In fact, there were another 5 tractor trailers in there. So that's 12 vehicles there. I don't know why they allowed to do that. It looks terrible. It doesn't make our township look good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ert. One of the things, just a point of order, I was watching one of the videos for our board meeting, and Mr. Thomas, you can turn your microphone towards you.
There's turbine off.
I know, but the problem is that if anybody watching the video online, they can only hear some of us speaking. So I had actually a resident call me or text me and say, hey, you know what? Your board members need to speak in the microphone because we can only hear it. We have the volume turned up all the way on our computer, and we can only hear some of them. So I think they just wanted to hear what you were saying.
That's why I always turn mine off.
Okay, well, we're going to hear you now.
Careful what you ask for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ert. Anybody else want to make public comment here before we move on? With that, we are going to move to our board presentation from our Fire Chief, Robert Burdett.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chief. Good evening.
Well, hope everything's going to be quiet for us tonight. We'll see. Every single year, the fire department's putting together an annual presentation of the fire department's previous year, what's going on. So it's my turn this evening. So right now, the fire department's being funded by the city and the townships through a contribution and tax collection. So as you can see on the spreadsheet that I have here, it's in your year-end report that you've already received, I believe. A little over $1.3 million generated through taxes and contributions. The remaining money that we receive is through delinquent taxes being collected, services rendered, such as fire inspections, also through miscellaneous income, which is sale of obsolete equipment that we may have at the stations, and reimbursement of essential services through essential services or through building insurance rebates. So it ends up last year, we had a total revenue of $1,414,711. Organizational chart, I know we've seen this one before. I report up through the superintendent, through the township board, the fire commission, and henceforth in through the city council. I have a fire inspector who reports directly to me, a deputy chief, battalion chief. We have 3 stations. Each station has a captain. 2 stations have lieutenants. The 3rd station does not because of the limited number of firefighters there. And then the listing of the firefighters at the bottom. In 2017, we had a full staff of 1 fire chief, 3 full-time firefighters, and 33 part-time firefighters. We still had 1 full-time firefighter position vacant that we just recently filled. Our incident totals, let me catch up with my other book here. I know I've got the totals here. Here we go. In 2017, the fire department responded to over 782 incidents. Of those, 122 were related to fires, 85 to rescue, 109 to hazardous conditions, 160 to service calls, 138 to good intent calls, and 168 to alarm malfunctions. Your fires themselves may not be a true fire. They could be an outdoor burning, could be a smoke investigation, something like that. Rescues and emergency medicals, those are vehicle entrapments, or where we were actually called in to do rescue work. There's no fire. Hazardous conditions could be anything from a downed power line, gas smell in the building, and then your service calls are anything, but they do anything else that we may run into for service, such as assisting police at an accident scene, or assisting with water removal from a basement to lessen a hazard, but they do not include public education or fire safety. Those are 2 different topics that we handle. Good intent are canceled alarms. They have an alarm that came over, punched in their keypad, and they cancel them out. And then your alarm malfunctions are true alarms that have gone off, but could be a possible problem with the alarm system, or actual smoke was seen, but wasn't there when we arrived. So 782 total calls. One of the significant things that we've been working with, or working on over the last 10 years is our response times. In 2017, the fire department responded to an emergency call, and I stipulate emergency calls, took us an average of 7 minutes and 23 seconds to arrive on scene. In some instances where it took us a little bit longer, it may have been because of road conditions, but in all, it may have been 1 or 2 minutes, a little bit longer than that. When we have larger incidents, when we have secondary units that have to respond, such as for structure fires, that secondary unit takes around 15 minutes to get on the road or to arrive at the scene. So it's a significant time difference between the first arriving truck to the second arriving truck. With today's environments, the homes are burning faster. There's more chance of a collapse occurring very early on in the stage of a fire. So it's imperative that we arrive there as fast as possible. And we've been able to meet the goal that we had for our last 10 years with our millage, with the hiring of the staff and getting the truck there as fast as possible. It also relates back to our property value saved. Last year, we were able to save over 81% of the total property that we responded to for structure fires, what could be anywhere from a mobile home, cooking fire, chimney fire, or an alarm activation through a sprinkler system. One of the key facts that Michigan is not very well noted for is the fact that Michigan is one of the highest ranking states for fire-related deaths. In 2011 and 2015, Michigan ranked 8th out of 50 states. We had 119 civilian deaths in fires. So far in 2018, when I wrote this slide, there were 39 in Michigan at that time. That included the one here in Grand Blanc this year. So you can see we're well on track for another record year with fire deaths. So early detection, fast response are key indicators to help save lives.
Why do you find that?
Yeah, why are we eighth, Chief? I mean, as opposed to 49th or whatever.
Well, it's our population base, age of the structures that we live or that we're residing in. It could be staffing of fire stations. How many on-call fire departments are in the area? Smoke alarms in homes. There's a lot of things that play into it. But unfortunately, Michigan is one of the highest in the nation.
Wow.
And that comes directly for you. Asked where it came from. That comes from the Federal Emergency Management Administration, so FEMA. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In regard to the highest death
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Michigan, do you think we should, for the next 10 years, we should direct some serious attention to this area here in the township?
Well, the American Red Cross, we've partnered with the American Red Cross this last year in installing smoke detectors in homes. Okay. So remember, this is a statewide effect. So you know, they depending upon what area you're in, this Muskegon Heights has a very high populace of homes with smoke detectors installed. Grand Rapids also. So a lot of the departments are having very big programs put together to do this. Grand Blanc always has. It hasn't been as robust as maybe it should be, but trying to get the funds in to purchase the smoke detectors to get into the homes can be a little bit of a daunting task. But it is a key factor that we want to push towards everybody and educating them and to get out and stay out. One of the next things that you're going to be seeing is close before you doze. Close your bedroom door before you fall asleep, because that keeps the fire and the smoke away from bedrooms. And it makes it more of a viable environment to perform a rescue in. So there's a lot of key things that we're going into this next year and doing with for risk assessment. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Along with that, doing fire safety inspections. This is just a sampling of the 100% of the inspections that we're doing. 69% of them are general inspections. These are all businesses. They are apartment complexes, just the common areas. We do not go into the actual apartments themselves. State of Michigan facilities, although we do not inspect them, we go in with the state inspector also as a courtesy, so that we learn what the environment, what those buildings are like. So that includes schools, nursing homes, hospitals that we'll go into. You have a 1% which deals with Halloween attractions, haunted houses. We inspect those also, and also fireworks. Okay. Some of the key things that we've done this last year is for public education and safety. We've done child safety seat inspections and installations. We've partnered up with the Genesis Hospital for the Safe Kids Foundation. They hold a installation program once a month at our station. They just use one of our bays. They have staff to come in and install car seats. We also have certified car seat installers. The smoke alarm installation. This last year we saw over 3,000 adults and children who received information through the about fire safety through our annual open house and station tours. And of course we take part in numerous community and school events. One of the things that the fire department prides itself on is our high level of training. Of course, every single month we have 2 trainings a month. But this last year we had 4 firefighters who completed their state certification in fire instructors. We have 5 firefighters last year who became certified as emergency medical technicians, and some of those went on and took their national boards. So they're actually licensed in, EMTs in the state of Michigan and basically United States. And also the firefighters attended flashover trainings and confined space rescue trainings this last year. My last slide, what are we going to be doing in the next 5 years? Obviously, throughout this summer, we've been talking about capital purchases. Put this one together to give some people an idea of how much money we're going to be spending. In the next 5 years, I'm planning on $1,986,412 that the fire department needs to spend to keep current with changes in equipment apparatus for the safety of the firefighters, self-contained breathing apparatus, our protective clothing that we wear, rescue tools, and the fire hoses that we have on board the trucks.
This does not include, that number does not include rolling stock either.
Top one, apparatus, fire apparatus. That's the 1,500,000. And that's just 2 trucks. All right.
Chief, in terms of the number of vehicles that we have, I mean, how do you determine that? Is that based on size of the community, or?
It can be based on the size of the community, the number of stations that you have. A lot of it is how many primary trucks do you need and how many backup trucks do you need.
Mm-hmm.
Presently, we have 3 primary pumpers and 1 reserve pumper. And we have 1 aerial truck and our heavy rescue truck, and the rest are support vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Bob, I've had several questions from residents asking, do they need to call the fire department before they have any kind of backyard burning, either for entertainment, or there are some neighbors that they are saying are having burning of very smelly whatever they're burning, and they were wondering what was the proper procedure we're asking for now.
Well, that's a good question. If you go onto the township's website, under the fire, the heading departments, go to fire, you'll see in there guidelines for outdoor burning. And that gives the explanation of what is expected of an individual when they burn. What we really look for is the wind speed has to be less than 10 miles an hour. 25 to 50 feet from any combustibles or high grasses. No petroleum products being used to start the fire whatsoever. And right now, open burning or larger fires, and I say larger fires when if you have a large brush pile that you want to burn, that's closed. We close that during the summer, and we'll open that up probably, I believe, right around November 1st, we'll open it back up. But if they have a large pile and they can break it down into a smaller piles about the size of campfires, we will allow that because campfires are open all summer long. Recently, we had the red flag warning from the National Weather Service on the drought conditions. All open burning was closed at that point. But once we had some storms come through, we opened it back up for campfires only.
So they would have to check the website before they started
Yes.
a burn?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that they could still call the fire department for people who
Of course.
don't do that?
Of course, they can call the fire department anytime. We
Right.
have a lot of people who do call. We refer them to the website, and many people call and say we don't have internet access, or maybe they found an old page that was still on the internet for some odd reason. We direct them to the correct one.
What about if a neighbor thinks that the person burning is just burning something unusual because it's smelly, and
Well,
should
the
they
only thing
call
that-
you, or, I mean, how do they
Well,
make a
they should call
determination?
911 because if the truck's not at the station, that's the only way you can guarantee to get a hold of us.
Okay,
But absolutely nothing is to be burned with paint, treated wood, or paint on the wood, treated wood, any type of cardboard or any garbage, anything like that is not to be burned. It's clean wood, no leaves. Okay,
okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Chief,
Yes, Mr. Mansour.
good evening. Going back to the incidents graph here.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2011, a quick tally said there were about 400 incidents. And
Right.
6
2011
years
is about the start when we started the millage program, the
Okay.
first 10-year millage.
So is the fact that we got more money a cause for the increase in the incidents? Or, I mean, I take a look at these and the fire has been pretty constant, right? 100.
Yeah, the fire's been right
pretty-
along there. Where you're seeing the increase is going to be the rescue and emergency calls,
Okay.
and also in service calls. When we did go to full-time, we started running with the police department for accident scenes to protect the incident, to
Okay.
protect personnel there. So obviously, you can imagine how many accidents we have in a day or even a month, and we're out there with them on those. So you will see an increase in the service calls for there. But from 2012 to 2013, I'm going to anticipate your next question, why is there such a big jump? Had a couple storms come through, so that you down power lines and so on, that's where that came in.
So we're actually trying to go with it after this is that, you know, it looks like the service calls, they're kind of trending a certain way. The good intent calls are increasing, but is there some way that we can, I mean, some of these calls we absolutely need to go out on, and you know, we're blessed to have a fire department that can do that for us. But some of these are just kind of, they're kind of waste.
Well,
you
they
could say.
may start off, let me use an alarm malfunction. It may start off as an alarm being received for a residential structure fire. When we arrive there, there's nothing going on, it's just burnt toast. The alarm went off, okay, so we have a smoke investigation there. So the category ends up different than what we maybe have been dispatched for initially.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a way that, you know, once you start measuring things, it's normal to want to, you know, increase the good ones and decrease the ones that are not productive use of our time.
Yeah, okay,
So-
I understand. To be honest with you, I've not seen very many calls, or any calls really, where I could say, yeah, this isn't one we really shouldn't be going on, where it's repeat offender sort of thing.
Okay.
Or somebody's alarm going off because of a faulty
We're
alarm.
going to go either way. Yeah, we have to respond. Okay?
Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair. Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
Would it be fair to say that population growth could play a role in fires?
Sure. Because the more people you have in your area, there's more potential for fires going on. The older the residents that are being lived in, businesses and so on like that, that can also increase the number of fires you have.
So you're saying there should be a concern about the growth in population?
Well, I'm not going to say that, you know, it's a good thing to have growth in population, but as long as we're able to keep up with that growth in population, with the fire department being able to respond to calls, keep our response times within the time frames that we set as goals, I think we're doing well. But if we change the goal, let's say if we went from 7 to 4 minutes, then we're going to have to take a look at operating differently.
So are you saying, Chief, that in the next 10 years, we have to carefully look at how we can do things differently?
Of course. Of course. That's why every single month when I do my month-end report, you have our response rates in there, response times. So you can see it as well as I can. Are we meeting the goal that we have? Or is it maybe a fluke for 1 month and the next month we're back onto it? And just kind of keeping the trend and observing what's going on.
Thank you.
Okay.
So one of the things is our response time that we watch to make sure that we're keeping that within range. But as the population grows, our response time, if everything's held constant in terms of if we don't employ more firefighters, don't employ more equipment, as population grows, I would guess that our response time may be slow just because of traffic and trying to get to those places. So
Yep. Traffic plays a big role in it, your placement of your stations. There's a lot of different things that we would look at.
and our population is probably not going to grow near where you're located right now. It's probably going to grow on the outskirts, so it takes longer for the trucks to get to those
True.
locations as well. So.
Yes.
So that's another factor. But
Yep. Okay.
okay.
All right.
Any other questions?
None for me. I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Yes. So, let's see, I think, Mr. Lehman, do we want to go over the audit since Mr. Heiser's here at this time?
Yeah, you have the 2017 financial audit from Yo and Yo, and Mr. Heiser is here, and he could kind of walk you through the highlights of that from the financial statements.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The report itself is approximately 25 pages. I'm going to hit the highlights, and then if you want to backtrack or go forward, I'll leave it up to you. I'll hit the highlights. The sections are tabbed, and what I'll do is I'll go to a particular tab. I'll call you to go to a tab and then a page number.
Okay.
And then much of this will be very familiar with you from prior years here. Well, the very first section I'd like to go into, and this is for the audit for the year ending 12/31/17. On an overall basis, we're very healthy. We came within budget, and we had funds carried over to our internal fund as projected in our going forward projections for the millage. So we seem to be on track here. If we go to but section 5, and then it says supplementary information, and then there's a 5-1. There's only one page in there. What I'd like to call your attention here is the way this format is laid out. We have budgeted amount, the original, the final, and then we have actual performance. And I want to just concentrate on the actual performance rather than go through the, the original budget, it was amended and so forth. And if you take a look at the actual results for revenues, and then to the right it'll say if we went over budget or under budget here. Our total revenues actually that we budgeted, or not, that we reported was $1,295,800. And we actually received more in total revenues than we had in our final budget, and that had to do with the miscellaneous income. We had $37,000. That came from the sale of equipment, and I believe, and we also sold one of those trucks, or fire trucks that we were hoping for. So the revenues, we came in on target. If you look at the expenditures going down, this is, in the we're talking general fund only. At this point, you can see the salaries, the wages. Now I'm going down the actual column. And the total expenditures were $1,048,524. And then we had, we transferred to the internal fund, that's at $149,882. Those are funds we took out of the general fund and went over to the internal fund, which is where we keep our equipment and where we pay our debt service. That's highlighted. So we had, actually at the end of the year, we had, the net change was $97,303, and our budget was $2,458. So what we ended up doing is, for this year, we ended up with with the beginning balance, fund balance. We ended up with a strong fund balance of $180,470. This is the highlight, and this is the internal fund. Any questions on the general fund at this point? Or, I'll come back to, let's go over to section 4-4. Tab 4, and then 4-4. You're going to see the general fund, and while I'll use the word, we have the balance sheet. I'll give you a chance to catch up here.
Compared to this number from the millage book we got last time.
Tab 4, and then it says, if there's a page called 4-3, or 4-4, excuse me. And you're going to see in the general fund, we have a comparison between 2016 and 2017. Our overall cash assets in 2017 are up approximately $200,000. And part of it has to do with, we do receive our taxes for the year at the end in December for the following year. So those are really kind of restricted funds for next year and carried over. If you look at our liabilities overall, for that general fund in 17 was $109,000. The taxes receivable, which are an offset to the funds we expect to receive from other governmental units. We ended up with a fund balance assigned, we used the word assigned for future post-employee obligations. Our fund balance was $180,470, up approximately $100,000 from the year before.
It was
Mr. Thomas?
4-4.
Yeah, no, I'm comparing that with our Bible from last November that was
Oh,
passed
okay.
out to us
I'm not
from
prepared.
the millage projection. So we actually, 100,000 extra?
Yes. Now, part of that too, you know, we didn't bring on our full-time firefighter until
Right, end of the year.
2018.
Yeah, you got
you
all
know,
those
so-
wages.
Yeah, so that's,
Good chunk of it right there.
Yeah.
yeah. And I expect, you know,
Plus the
that,
benefits would wipe it out.
Hey, did we hire the administrative assistant?
yes, we did.
But that
Because
was-
that didn't count in that either.
No, it was not in there. That really started, I think it was, Chief, I'm going to have to ask you, was that around
They were both in 2018.
Yeah,
2018?
so that-
Administrative assistant was January.
And those weren't in the last year's projections too, so that's two.
Plus the
Yes.
benefits for both, right?
Yep, you're right. So that, yeah, so that's the.
Mr. Mansur?
Mr. Heiser, I
Yes,
have a question for you. When we say in the assets due from other government units, is that like an account somewhere where that money's in there, or is that just a bunch of IOUs?
that's money that we expect to receive from the township and the city during the year
Okay.
to go forward. In other words, the assessments have already been recorded for the 2018, but it's at the end of 17.
Okay.
And so the auditors put that on the book to say, this is what's expected. If you're expected to receive money like within the next 6 months or a year, but it's been tradition, we do recognize we have funds coming in the year 18.
Thank you.
A good question. Government has its own unique,
Accounting practices.
yeah, yes. Let's go to 4-6. (4-6) is a description of a general fund. It breaks down the revenues, a comparison between 2016 and 17, and it does it in more details because it highlights the city and the township and the contributions in there between the prior year and the current year in terms of what we've received from both organizations. For example, you'll see the property taxes from the city of Grand Blanc were 105, and then they went to 104. The Charter Township, we received 575,000, and then we received, now this is from property tax revenues, 584,000, and then you can go down the line here and see what the what I call the allocation was. In addition to the millage, it says member contributions. The city last year was 104, this year is 106, and then Grand Blanc Township went from 106 to 462. These are passed by the board and the city. Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Heiser, just point out for the board is that when you're looking at those contributions, this number does not include the 120,210 that the township sends separately for the internal service fund.
That's a good point. Yes, there's 120,000 that is allocated directly to the internal fund. And, you're the only one that has that allocation going our way. And that'll be picked up. Thank you for bringing that up.
Will we see that in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a way that the accountants could put that in that figure?
Well, there's two separate funds. We have a general fund, and then we have an
Okay,
internal fund.
okay, so it's in the other fund, okay.
Yes. So, I didn't like it either. I mean, I've been around since 2014, playing with this. But that's the way the animal was created back 10 years. So,
Right, we wanted it specifically in that fund for equipment so that it couldn't be used anywhere else, was the plan, okay? And of course, it was used in the last few years because the economy dropped down and they had to use it to exist, so. And we knew that
Exactly.
they were using it.
yeah, but the whole purpose was, instead of running it through the general fund and then the commission, are they going to transfer it or when are they going to do it? The temptation, well, we'll do it later. But it went directly from
Right.
your account into our internal fund.
Right.
Sort of make sure the allowance gets where it belongs.
And we're the only partner in the commission that does that.
In the internal fund, yes.
Like I said, that's the only partner.
Your microphone on?
No.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Okay, my mic's on, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
I hope so.
Yeah, okay, let's go to 7. Now, this shows you a breakdown here in more detail here. This is the general fund. And you'll see a comparison of the general fund from 16 to 17. And, you know, starting out with your full-time employees' salaries. And as you go right down, you can see here we had, in 2016, before the allocation out to the internal fund, we had $1,100,000 in 16. And then we had $1,048,624 in 17. The transfer into the internal fund, if you go down where there's a bracketed number, 149,882, that money was pulled out of the general fund, and you'll see it coming into the internal fund. The year before that, it was 164,000. What we wanted to do is make sure we had, and this was part of the dictate that came down here, we were going to have at least a positive fund balance in our general fund at the end of the year going forward. Of course, we can always move that money after the audit as we would need it. But right now, you know, the year before we had a $46,000 deficit, as you can see in 16, excuse me, and then we had a addition to fund balance of 97,000. So our ending fund balance in cash is 180,470, which is where we wanted to do. And we talked about having a 15% reserve, if you would. Kind of remember that.
Carl, is it 15 or 12?
Well, I prefer a lower number, but 15 seems to be sticking in my mind here. I guess it would be something we'll have to look into the record for.
Was it 15 or 12? Superintendent.
Mr. Thomas?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, through you to Superintendent.
The way we've always done ours here is 12 to 15%. You're never going to hit it exact. It's as long as you're within that range, and I think that's...
This is the one that we added into the...
That we want to hold, yep.
Thank you.
I like the word range, I'll remember that, 12 to 15. So.
I didn't use range, I thought it was benchmark.
And that means, what they mean is at 12 to 15%. That means of your total expenditures that you expect.
Exactly.
You know, I just wanted to say that's the, you know, multiplier. Going to page 4-9, you're going to see the, this is the internal service fund. And if you go to the very top line where it talks cash in bank and cash equivalencies, our internal fund cash balance compared to 2016 went from 439,000 to 543,000. And that's because of, you know, our transfer of funds, and we didn't have a lot of equipment repairs either at the end of the year. That 543,000 is not a fresh new number. It's layered on top of the 439. In other words, you know, we had a beginning balance of 439, and then it went up to 543. So that's about $120,000 that we were able, and that's a magic number, 120. So, you know, in other words, we kept what we had in the past, and we added, at the end of the year, we had cash available for the internal fund going into 2018, which is, if you look at our projections that we were talking about here, I think the number was closer to around 400,000.
Yep, 419.
Okay, thank you. Are we working this together? That's good.
No, I'm just...
So, in other words, we're on target, you know.
And that's the number that we call the depreciation, correct?
I won't go for it. That's close enough, but these are hard dollars, actual dollars
Right.
in the account. We could write an account.
Depreciation.
Then you see the, you know, assets that that we have in the accumulated depreciation. You go down the bottom, and then you see the, you know, the fund balance unrestricted is equal to the cash. That's a 543,701. So we're on target to jump into 2018. We need to use that money for purchasing trucks.
Right.
In other words, that's what it's being built up for. We did pay off the rest of our long-term debt this year. So the vehicle we bought in 2014, it had like an $80,000 balance. That was paid off in 2017. So, you know, it's like a credit card. Once you pay it off, then, you know, we got plans, and we're going to have to make some commitments here in 2018-19 here. I'm looking for a very positive vote approval so we can continue this budget moving forward. If you look at 4-9,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Did we do that? Yes, we did.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Heiser?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
On page 4-9, where it says cash and cash equivalent, did you say that the more maintenance fees we have, that number would decrease?
Yes.
So you're suggesting that we keep the latest equipment up to date as much as possible, and I'm referring to purchasing new equipment.
Yeah, we're anxious to get, replacement equipment in here. For example, I think that if you had to have brakes repaired on one of our emergency vehicles, you're looking at thousands of dollars, maybe $4,000 to $6,000, for that one little fix. So we didn't have what I call in our major capital equipment any major repairs that we had to deal with. So we're taking good care of our equipment as we go forward. That's a reflection of the leadership that's in the fire department here. Any other questions on that? Okay. If you go to page 4-10, okay, here's where we have the contributions coming in. If you look at 2017, I can tell Earl found it, so
Yeah.
and he's showing Ken. If you look at the second column of revenues, 120,210. That's the money that comes directly from the township, and it has for the last 2 years. And it doesn't go through the internal fund. If you jump down to the bottom, about 4 lines up, it says operating transfers in. You see that 149,882?
Yes.
Okay, that's transferred in, and we really have a deficit in our overall spending, as you can see right there, 123. So that contribution is necessary. So what do we really need? If you add those two numbers together, you're looking at $280,000, let's say $300,000 of outside money coming in. Okay, so we had $1,600, somehow that, whatever that was, the year before was more. So this is really the key financing of our internal fund. Now, what is going to be proposed, or what is proposed is for our budget with our new budget and our source of funds, we're going to move the operating expenses that you see here, the gas, oil, and so forth, and the actual hard dollars. What we're going to do is that's going to be put into the general fund and monitored like other expenses, but we are going to keep the internal fund because you have to have an internal fund and long-term debt. This is like a long-term debt where you keep your debt listed in here, and also the asset equipment and your depreciation. And that depreciation is in this year was $173,358. So from a cash standpoint, that's an add back because we don't write a check for depreciation, but it is a recognized expense.
Right.
So we were right on target the way that worked out, and we got a firm grip on 2018. So that concludes. These are the highlights for the internal fund and how it's funded. Any questions on that? And then we'll go in the home stretch. Final.
No, it sounds like tomorrow I'll have to call you and meet you at your office for a tutorial because I can't figure out the $100,000, but.
Okay. It took me a while to figure it out too.
I can't figure it out.
Okay, go to 4-22. It's at the back. And this is your favorite subject. It's called the OPEB, the Other Post-Employee Benefits. Now, the auditors have asked us, and if you look at the square in the middle, it talks about what the obligation is. If you look at 12/31/15, it was $124,852. In 17, it went up to $376,378. The auditors, in their calculations of this, are asking to make sure that we have a good understanding and firm understanding of how to set this up. And one of the items that they're talking about here, and I'm only directing this to the fire department, it has nothing to do with your retirement programs here, but the auditors have made it very clear. They said, of your 2 retirees, they already have Medicare, and we should just cover the uncovered Medicare costs, because the program is we have right now, it's already built in, so you have double coverage for on Medicare, and then also through I think it's the Blue Cross or whatever the correct program is. And I'm not really interested in talking about anybody else, it's just those 2, and the auditors are saying you're really paying
Double.
twice.
Right.
You know, and that's what drives up this post-retirement.
Right.
So, you know, that's something to deal with later. Yes,
Mr.
Al?
Yes, Mr. Mansell.
Mr. Heiser, so on that page 4-22, 15, I'm looking at the annual OPEB cost. We go from 10,000 to 312, back down to 26, 27. What happened there?
Hitting Medicare.
A lot of it has to do with the Medicare, and also the,
I mean, that's huge.
Yep.
the original calculations going back to 14 didn't really focus in on this as detailed as it was in terms of the Medicare and the coverage, you know, that we have through our senior program here. So I went through the numbers, and I want to get a good understanding here. I guess the question is, can we change that or can we not? If we're locked in with our benefit package, because these are your employees that are retired, you know, the chief and the assistant. If there's not much we can do with it and they have double coverage, and that's what it is, that's what it is. So I'm just looking at that, how that number calculates, because they expect that number to continue to grow because healthcare goes up each year. And this is no surprise.
Mr. Lehman?
I think it's a good catch by Trustee Mansour, but I think it's a question for Yo and Yo because that number is such an irregular number to be in the annual thing. It doesn't look like it could be, I mean, it probably should be at 31,000 or something for the annual cost, because if you look at the next column, you look at net OPEB obligation, the obligations didn't
Didn't go up by that much.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we're going to talk to them and get a better understanding on this. So
Okay.
I'll be contacting the appropriate people on this, and I'm just reporting that we need to have a better understanding of this and see if it is what it is and there's any changes or not, you know.
Sounds good.
So,
Yes.
Mr.
Yep.
Supervisor, so is that an action item that we have to form here to kind of understand the layering on of these insurances to see if there's an opportunity for us, you know, without reducing the benefit to our employees to, you know, kind of, untangle this thing?
Mr. Lehman, would you like to respond?
So I can help answer that question in one way. The contracts that they retired under had the language very specifically in their employment agreements that they would maintain the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, that they retired with through the township. So the contract language is very specific. It's why it's carried through even when they hit Medicare age. Can we try to negotiate with the retired employees to show them we can offer them a benefit that would be
Comparable.
at least comparable for a lower cost? One of the reasons that they hang on to it, and it's the same with a lot of the union negotiated collective bargaining agreements through the township that I found when I got here, is they had that language specific in there at the time, and they retire with it. It says that, you know, when they leave here, that's the plan that they left with, and that's what caused our, you know, we did change some last year with some of the retirees because it saved us a considerable amount of money, but it is a voluntary thing to keep from litigation. I mean, they could always litigate saying, here's my contract language is very specific. But I think if we can show folks like we did with the changes that we made, that we can offer you a very comparable plan and save the township considerable. The biggest thing that ties it is the prescription drug cost, and that's what drives the costs up on those plans.
So this cost is capped, though. I mean, we don't have anyone going into this pool growing it any further. And
Correct.
so the increases are simply the increases of the normal annual, whatever care costs are, the insurance costs. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Guzek?
So, Mr. Lee, so it's correct that the new full-time employees have a different verbiage in their contracts? Then,
Right, they're all on a
that it matches,
health
is
savings
comparable
account,
one, right?
a retiree health savings account.
Right.
There's no need for action on this as much as the auditors are going to meet with me, and I'll get a hold of maybe Dennis and other appropriate people here, just so they have an understanding on how they're doing this calculation. And that projected amount over that 300,000, that's just a guess, you know.
Yeah.
That's all that is. Like when the Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl, you know.
That's not a guess.
Okay. One other thing I do want to point out to you, you have a letter stuck in the back. I almost forgot that.
Oh.
And this is a letter from Yo and Yo to, you know, the, for oversight and for those charged with governance. This goes to you to see if there's been any issues that they want to call to your attention here. And I'll just highlight and keep moving. I'm wearing out my welcome, I think, here. So page 1, if you have it right here. Okay, it says significant audit findings. If you look at this and read this over here, what they're doing, if they found anything that was materially misclassified or unreconciled or in the wrong accounts, they said in terms of the audit findings, they didn't find anything in there that was material misclassified. They talk about accounting standards that they're being reported, they have to use for reporting purposes. Page 2. Regulatory and other updates, they talk about we're using the correct chart of account. Number 2 and number 3, to go to page 3, it says difficulty encountered in performing the audit. In other words, everything was ready. When they came in, they were able to complete, start, and end the audit on time without any, oh, well, we got to reconcile 8 months worth of bank reconciliations. We were ready, and that's a big plus for the fire department. Management representation, that would mean, did we bully them? Did we say, you better give us a good report or we're going to get somebody else? And, you know, we didn't seek a second opinion. Sometimes these things happen with unethical individuals. And then...
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Massey?
What you mean by unethical individuals?
Well, that would mean that, for example, you know, the accountant who's doing the work finds something in the books, as an example here, and he wants it to have it changed, which would possibly turn the operating results from a profit to a loss, and the manager would say, well, I'm not going to change it, and I'm going to go see if I can find another accountant to do that. In other words, you know, step on the independence, so that's never been a problem.
So this letter is stating there were no unethical practices that they discovered.
That is correct.
Right.
Yes.
Ms. Lang?
I was going to, again, reaffirm what you just said, Mr. Bennett, because I didn't want that sentence to appear that there had been something unethical that had occurred, and there is, again, nothing in those reports to even infer that something like that was going on.
Mr. Massey?
I have a question. Does this include if during the audit, I went to one of the auditors and asked, well, I'd like for you to do X work because I asked you. What is that?
Yeah, well, you're on thin ice with that one here. You're asking them to do additional work, or it has. If it's not included in the engagement letter, it's unauthorized. That's what it is. So the auditors generally speak with only 1 or 2 people that the organization. They work with the chief, you know, and
Finance director.
And they'll talk to me, you know, at the end here. So the auditors really, you see, they're not even here.
So are you, I want to make sure I understand you very clearly. Are you saying that during the process of this audit, if I had gone into the fire station during the audit and asked one of the auditors to report back to me on whether someone at the station has done something incorrectly. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, they would report that your inquiry was outside of the scope of the audit, and that would be a separate engagement. Even though maybe it was well-intended, you know, because people don't know the roles of the auditors. But if you did ask that of them, they would say, I really can't, that's not part of our engagement. They'll refer it to, you know, their senior auditor, and then there would be a process where they would talk to you and the department here, or maybe what issues are you looking at? The audit is a scope, and they follow the scope of the audit.
Right.
You know, anything else can be done, but it has to be a separate signed engagement letter.
Okay, Mr. Guzak?
So just to re-verify, our engagement letter showed that everything was in perfect condition, they didn't find any problems, and everybody's was cooperating, and it was a good audit, right?
Yes, and all the records were there, and you got what they call an unqualified opinion, which is the highest letter.
Highest rating.
It's unqualified. And then, one of the items they did bring out here in this report, and I may have went right by it too quickly, but they did talk about looking at the OPEB benefits again. It's something they would like to clear out of this section here. It's been lingering there for 2 years now, you know, about what is it? Are we doing this correctly?
Right. Mr. Limita?
So there's two ways to clear that out from the auditor's findings so it doesn't keep coming up every year. One would be to voluntarily negotiate with the retirees, and maybe we can make some changes, and that would, what they're saying is it seems out of the norm for the amount that it's spending on OPEB, or OPEB liability is higher than it should be for just the number of retirees. The other thing to clear it out of there, if we were unable to come to terms with our retirees, would be that we provide the auditors with copies of their employment agreements that they retired with to show that from a liability standpoint, we are going to have to litigate this to make the changes if we can't get it done voluntarily, and if we chose not to litigate it because of the expense involved, that we show the auditors, we provide them with copies of the employment agreements they retired with, and then at least they have those as part of their audit, and then it will stop being flagged each year.
And that's exactly what they're asking you to do. They don't want to have it in there again, so.
So we'll take some action on that and
Right, we'll
make
fix
sure
that.
it's something on our
That
list.
concludes my report.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Mr. Heiser.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your time
Thank you
and
very much.
your efforts to help our fire department as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shouldn't let your phone on.
From there, we're going to move to review the Township Board agenda for our meeting on May 10th. Switch agendas here. And we're going to have a swearing-in ceremony for new full-time firefighter, Michael Hertzberg. We'll also have our fire chief presenting Firefighter of the Year Award. We will also have a public hearing on industrial facilities tax exemption certificate for Magna Electronics Technology, Inc. And the board will consider a resolution to approve the application for Magna for their IFT. We'll have several representatives here from Magna, both local and their international representative as well. We'll have citizen comment, we'll get approval of the minutes. We've got our consent agenda items. Mr. Guzak has his treasurer's report. We will have approval of a purchase of crack sealant for our crack sealing program. Item C, the board will consider a motion to waive the competitive bidding requirement due to sole source provider to approve the purchase of one additional license for Pipe Logix MACP inspection module from Pipe Logix of Palm Desert, California for $16,750, and authorize Township Superintendent to execute all related documents and contracts.
that the sewer?
What's that? I don't know. We
Is
wanted-
that the sewer camera thing?
Yeah, actually, we've got Mr. Potter here that'd be happy to answer that question, but this is really, it is a reimbursable expense, right, through the SAW grant.
It's actually software that goes along with the TV truck to inspect manholes as opposed to sewer lines.
Really?
We have to, the SAW grant, we have to inspect about 6,000 manholes, so this kind of automates the process in filling out the appropriate MXCP form and taking pictures and videos of the sewer manholes. So it automates that whole process and makes it much more easy to do that many numbers.
Does this work with what we just got through doing with sewer work, Dan?
Yeah, and it's integrated into the GIS system, so that we can actually go in and look at an individual manhole, and it brings up the report and the pictures and the videos that are related to that manhole. So it's a very good package that's going to help the asset management.
So when Jeff, or when Director Sears was talking about we're going to be purchasing these, I believe he called them modules at times, so be it for different, this is going to be one of the first modules. Awesome.
Any other questions? Okay, item D, the board will consider a motion to approve the annual renewal of the financial software service support fee with BS&A software for the period of May 1st of 2018 through May 1st of 2019 in an amount not to exceed $33,348. Mr. Lehman?
This is an item that you see every year. It comes from finance. It really could have come from anywhere. This includes our accounts payable, cash receipting, delinquent personal property. I mean, basically everything that we use with BS&A. These are our software service support and licensing fees that we pay annually. They used to come in at all different times. 2 years ago, we consolidated them all so that they hit at the same time so that the board can actually approve the annual licensing fee in one fell swoop.
And we use this software BS&A daily, right? Mr. Lehman?
Everything we do.
Everything we do is tied into that software. Okay. So it's critical. Okay, moving on to future positioning. The board will consider the applications for the vacant trustee position and discuss the process for moving forward. I think, what was it, total of 6?
Yes, sir.
We had a total of 6 applicants and some very qualified individuals that applied for that position. Mr. Laddie, there is no prescribed method. It's whatever the board chooses. I think one of the things we decided at our last board meeting was that we wanted our board members to prioritize those individuals so that you had a clear idea of which ones would be candidates that you would want to consider, or so that you did your homework. And I know that a number of you have met with candidates on your own and talked with them, which is good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey.
in regard to that, establishing some kind of, I guess, guideline, I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to move that each board member state their #1 choice for the vacant seat on the board, and the #1 choice be present before the board on Thursday, May the 10th, at the regular scheduled board meeting.
To discuss with them the position and interview
Yes.
them, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, on Thursday. So we got a motion.
Oh,
Second, but
Well, we're
Okay.
not
I
actually,
got a question though. So,
Well, Joe's making,
Second.
I guess we don't make decisions necessarily tonight, but
Well, I
Joe's
mean-
recommendation is that we do that.
motion, no,
Well, he made a motion, so we
Second.
can vote on it tonight, right,
Yeah.
Mr. Laddie? I mean,
I
there's nothing
second.
preventing.
I second
Okay.
it, but to open it up for discussion reasons.
Okay.
Huh?
Discussion.
David, I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor, through you to Attorney Laddie. So there is no prescribed witch's brew to this at all, is there?
That's correct.
So basically, just let me get this right. You want us to say who we picked #1, and then just bring that person up and go from there, right?
Go from there.
All right.
And
What, do it now, tomorrow, when?
tomorrow. The
Or
person
do we
will be-
want to bring up, like, my number one person is this, do that now, and then just
Yes.
go?
We're not gonna do
Just
that now.
Well, if they're gonna be here tomorrow, we gotta know who it is that we're gonna want here tomorrow.
I need some, I don't know.
I mean, if we're gonna ask them to be here at the meeting tomorrow to interview them,
Yeah.
then we'd need to know who it is tonight.
So, Mr. Supervisor, so I guess the question that I have is that, you know, basically we're giving someone, I guess, 24 hours notice, less than that, you know, to be here, and kind of springing it on them a bit out of the blue. And while these are important positions here, I mean, people do have other, you know, commitments and things that they may be out of that. So I think it's absolutely a good idea for having someone, prospective people here, but I'm not sure that I could support requiring to do that in a 24-hour period.
So if they're available, maybe, then we
Yeah.
could. If they're not,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Make
Invite them here,
provision for that.
if at all possible to come. I would support
That-
that for
that's
sure.
I
reasonable.
think that's what Joe was saying.
Yes,
I understand,
Yes.
Mr. Mansur. It's a very good point, Mr. Mansur, because we can't rule them out just because they weren't going to be
On
here
one day,
tomorrow.
one time.
Ms. Lane?
For clarification, if I'm understanding what Mr. Massey is asking, each of us will call somebody that is our person that we think is number one and ask them to come to the meeting tomorrow. That's how I'm reading what you're saying.
I think what Mr. Massey's saying is that we see if there's a consensus amongst two, I don't know, I'd take it as that.
yes. Is there a consensus among the board tonight that we state our number one choice?
Okay.
We're
Okay.
prepared to state.
And that number one choice will be notified to be at the next board meeting, which is tomorrow, if there's ample time.
So you want us to throw, I'm so sorry.
Who the person is that we want to interview. If, I guess we see who our top candidate is that we'd like to, each of us would like to interview, see if there's some consensus.
Yes.
And if we have a consensus or a majority, then we ask them to
Be
come to the
present.
meeting.
Yes.
If they can't, then they come to the next one.
I've read all the.
So there's a,
Okay.
that was Joe's motion, it was seconded. I don't know, is there any other discussion?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I know I'm not prepared to go and throw one name out tonight. I would prefer that we have maybe a couple of people that we like and interview more than just a,
Well, let's move
I mean,
forward with Joe's and then,
in previous years, we've interviewed,
well, let's see
you know,
where Joe's
okay.
motion goes, and if that fails, then we can go on to a motion to interview
Okay.
more than one. So I guess we have a motion, we had a second.
all right, Mr. Mansour, are you in favor of,
Well, motion doesn't require a roll call, but I am in
Right.
favor of it.
Yeah. All in favor?
A resolution?
Oh.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. 4-2, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
the way I counted it.
Yes.
I don't understand what the urgency is. Mr. Laddie, how long do we have to pick a person for this position? This is a very important position that's going to be for at least 2 years, okay? This isn't a 30-day term, and then the election's going to take care of it. This is 2 years. So what is our deadline for the amount of time we need?
You have to decide within 45 days of
Okay.
April 30th.
Okay.
And I believe that the 45th day is actually your Thursday, your June regular Thursday board meeting.
And we aren't deciding tonight, I mean, we're.
Well, yeah, you are.
But,
Yeah.
but that's
Deciding
45
we're
days.
Let
That's,
him finish.
that's technically not within 40, that is exactly 45 days. Now, if you did it that night, I don't think there would be any major upset to whatever action you took. But that would be your outside time limit would be that Thursday meeting.
Mr. Massey, your motion was not to choose the person tonight that we're going to appoint, it's to talk with them tomorrow night
Just
and,
talk to them tomorrow night, the front runner, whoever comes out to be the front runner tonight.
so it isn't necessarily to pick that person, it's to
No,
talk
it's
to
not
them tomorrow.
necessary to pick that person.
Okay.
I just
Yes.
think that we should be interviewing more than one person, because a lot of times you need to have a person speaking, and usually you have at least 5 questions that they would answer, and then we could see how the other ones are responding to it, and then that gives us a more educated.
Mr.
Yes.
That's just my opinion.
Mr.
You've
Mayor,
got your own
sure.
opinion.
Mr. Massey.
Mr. Trustee Earl, I would like to say this. You're telling me by the process, but I heard it before you spoke. There's not a process. So how
Right.
can you tell me by the
Well,
process?
and before we get in back and forth, we have a process that's been proposed, it was
Yes.
voted on, and it was approved by our board. So the idea of another process can come up. However, we already passed the motion to carry out with the process that Mr. Massey suggested. And so at this point, I'm going to ask that we go down the line and mention who we would like to see interviewed tomorrow. And see if we have any consensus, and if there's a consensus, then we'll bring that person up. If there's not a consensus, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board.
We were supposed to tell them. You know, I thought originally your original intent was going to be you're going to have someone on tomorrow to find the amount of the person and then interview them in the previous meetings, not to do it all in 1 week. We've got 45 days. I don't know why you're rushing this through, but you've already done it. You've got
Well,
4 people that agree
I'm
to it.
gonna call for asking each board member who it is they'd like to interview. And we asked everyone at the last board meeting to prioritize who it was, and hopefully everybody's done their homework and has prioritized them. So, Mr. Mansour,
So, my top candidate's Lonnie Atkins.
Lonnie Atkins. I guess we'll go down the row. Mr. Thomas,
Lonnie Atkins.
Mr. Guzak,
I want to interview all of them.
okay?
Okay, so put down all 6
We're
names.
asking, the
So I
motion
want-
was for one. The motion was that each board member choose one person.
And we were supposed to choose that tomorrow, not today. So,
Are you going to choose one or not?
no, not today.
Okay. Ms. Lane?
I'm not going to choose tonight.
Mr. Massey?
Lonnie Atkins.
Okay. We have a majority right there.
Your choice?
I'll go with Lonnie Atkins as well.
Isn't that convenient?
So we'll ask Mr. Atkins to see if he can be at the meeting tomorrow evening. And we'll interview him at that time. All right.
I'm not quite positive what the, I don't know what the problem is. I don't understand what you're upset about.
We have some very good candidates here.
I know.
I think they deserve the right to at least have 5 minutes to discuss why they would like to be one of our trustees.
I've
I
talked
think
to
we've given them
every
that time
single
to
one of
come,
them.
as well as, I know Mr. Thomas has met with a number.
Well, that's fine. You've already decided, so just,
One of my best friends, Mark Kilmer, I wanted Mark and Lonnie. And
Well,
it's-
we're not going to get into all that, but all I can say is everybody's had ample time to talk to the candidates and look over the resumes.
that was-
With that, the next item on the agenda is, and I agree, we have a number of very qualified candidates. And who knows, maybe we'll be interviewing more of them after
After the
tomorrow.
one, yeah.
I mean, we have, like you said, we do have more time, and we'll see how our meeting goes tomorrow.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
so does this agenda item, the board will consider applications for the vacant trustee position and discuss the process moving forward. Does that need to be amended to something more like the board will interview prospective candidate?
Right. Yes. So, Mr. Lemata will make that change on the agenda. Or actually, yes, good point, Mr. Mansour. Next item under future positioning, the board will consider selecting a date for a public hearing for a proposed DDA district. And I know Mr. Laddie was checking on a range of dates for that.
We do. What we have to do in this is if we decide to adopt the resolution, and also, we don't need to adopt the ordinance at that time, but we need to make sure that we have 2 publications one less than 40 days before the public hearing, and then a second one more than 20 days before the public hearing. And so, if, for example, you chose to set your decision making action for your June 14th meeting, you would be able to accomplish two publications according to that time frame. If you want to do it later, you can. It just means we'll hold off publications on the in the paper, and also we need to advise everybody who owns property in the district of the public hearing, and it has to be more than 20 days before the hearing. And then finally, we have to make sure we notify all the taxing entities more than 20 days before the hearing, and thereby certified mail, by the way, the taxing entities.
So, Mr. Limita, do you have a date in mind for this, or?
I think if you pick a date in June for one of the June meetings, you'll be okay. You just want to get it out so there's plenty of notification time. And it really gives the board the opportunity to learn more about the DDA process, whether you feel it's right as an economic development tool for us to move forward. You know, a lot of times get questions answered, and then when you hold that public hearing, you will be able to, by then, provide a good discourse between any concerned taxing entities who want to come and talk to you about why or why not they would support it, as well as anyone who lives within the district.
So if we went with the first Thursday meeting in June, we could hit all those deadlines?
You could.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
So, I mean, I read through or tried to get through the material that was in the packet on the DDA, but I would certainly appreciate if there was a specific section or time that we could have someone who is knowledgeable about the ramifications of this maybe take some time with the board to kind of roll through that and be able to answer some questions rather than just, you know, kind of inferring stuff from the packet. I would appreciate if we could put that into the time schedule somehow.
Okay.
Do you,
Yes.
would, if we had that sort of a board level informational discussion, if we had that at your last meeting in May, would that be soon enough for you?
Yeah, that's...
Because we would already be then we'd be in the timing process.
That's fine.
For setting up,
I would just want to carve out a time for us to get a little bit boned up on this.
Sure. And then Mr. Lehman, I think we had some discussions about a pretty an informative presentation on the night of the public hearing to let everybody know exactly what, you know, let the public know and also the entities know. So it seems to me, if that works for you, that if we had our sort of board level introduction at the end of May and then our public hearing in June 14th, we can hit our dates at least.
So we do the public first, and then we vote if we want the DDA?
Yeah, that's true. What we'll do, you're setting a date to hold the public hearing for consideration of this. And so, again, if at the close of that public hearing you decide that that it's your intent to create a district, then that will be your first step. And what that will do is put everybody on notice. It'll put the taxing entities and the property owners on notice that we do intend to create this district. But that will be all the detail that you'll be completing on that night. And then we'll have to roll up our sleeves and move farther down the line and discuss what exactly a DDA authority will look like, how is their function, what do they do. We'll set up a plan for improvements. The work will continue on this for a while, and the details will continue to develop. But at any point in time, if you decide to either not continue or take a change in direction, you'll be able to do that after that first hearing date.
And then, so the last meeting of May, who would, full disclosure, Attorney Laddie and I spent 2.5 hours on the phone discussing the DDA and the pros and cons, and so I already have my.
So you're an expert.
I already have my, no, I just know enough to be dangerous now. So, but how would we go about having a tutorial?
I can do it, but I really think that between David and myself, we can put a PowerPoint presentation together and walk through the basic concepts of the DDA and why we're asking you to consider that as financial tool as an incentive to spur economic development. It will be more broad-based because you can't, I mean, it's more about, David's right, the real work would begin if you decided to form the DDA boundaries. You can decide whether you want something in or out of that boundary. I mean, there's a lot of questions that are going to come, but it's more about, it's an economic development incentive tool to where you have the opportunity to say, we can, hopefully if the county or other taxing entities agree, capture some of that tax increment. It'll establish a baseline. So what you do is you pick a district that's going to be the baseline as it sits right now when the district creates. Anything that comes in after that, they'll still be getting the taxes based upon what was there at the time that it started. Or anything that is incremental after that, you capture to pay yourself back to do public works good projects. It has to be something that's very specific. It may be that you want to put in roads, or you have water sewer infrastructure needs. It could be, you know, power needs. I mean, there's things that would power that are the public good. It could be a bike path that goes through. I mean, there's things that you can establish with that money, but it's very specific. So I think if we do that broad-based kind of why, put the why behind it, and then the inner workings will come out as you go through the process.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
So just thinking through what I think I heard said there is that, you know, we'll be brought up to speed on this, and there'll be some areas. I mean, there's a proposed boundary today. So if we get to the end of May and have our discussion and decide we make some changes on that, would there be sufficient time to, if we made a boundary change, to notify the affected people?
If you're going to make the boundary smaller, we'll be fine. If we want to make it bigger, then we'd have to renotice.
Or change the
Yeah,
perimeter.
Anybody who's not in, and there's also a way, I mean, we could, if we chose, to select an initial boundary and then change that boundary, but we would have to go through the notification process for any new taxing entities and certainly any new property owners. So you're still, even, you can modify it. The danger will be, or the problem will be, that if we're adding property to it, then we're going to have to go through a renotice event. But again, that isn't going to be, once we get things ready in our mind for that initial public hearing, if we do have to take, if we do just take a 25-degree shift to the right or something, that's not going to be a big deal. It would only just trip another public hearing.
Boundaries seem to be a little bit irregular, and I'm sure there's good reasons for that. But when that happens, it kind of begs the question, you know, why did we zig or zag here or there? Mm-hmm. So that's my concern about that.
And I can answer it with a pretty easy answer. When you're developing your DDA boundaries, and most DDA isn't just a square, it's based upon properties and the zoning and the potential for it, because you're not trying to include everything like a big square in a district, because there's areas in there that are zoned residential that are going to stay residential. There's no need to think that would ever change as we're forming this, so there's really no need to include it in there. There is no tax capture. All we're doing is adding additional people who will have to be noticed and come in, even though there's really no impact to them, there's no impact to us, there's no impact to taxing entities. So you really try to include in there areas that you think will have that can be impacted by the tax increment financing that you're going to collect, the tax increment revenue that you'll collect. These are areas where you have the opportunity to maybe spur some development. Maybe you guys would decide that you wanted to offer capital fee-free development if they built within that time frame of the DDA capture, for an example. There really wouldn't be a benefit in doing that, you know, in a residential sector. So that's why you see that real regular. It's cut around lot lines, so it's very specific around lot lines of what's going to be included.
So let me just indulge me one more thing. So this is, you know, it ties in really with the master plan development that we're kind of in the middle of. So I suspect that Director Lloyd is, you know, fully engaged with this and tied in and can, you know, help the Planning Commission understand what opportunities this offers, and maybe the Planning Commission actually, if we could distribute this to them, kind of give them a heads up for some potential input as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Lane?
That was one of my concerns. With the starting of the master plan, and we're looking forward in the future, is there are we planning right now that all of the zoning that would be in the DDA as it exists today would remain the same, or is there any possibility that you're going to start saying, oh, this is in our DDA and now it's in our DDA, so we want to change, for example, your statement of residential to multiple density to research park or something like that?
The DDA has nothing to do with zoning whatsoever.
No, that, I'm saying, but by changing or by including residential property in it at this time, is that going to lead to the possibility that through the DDA process, there will be a need for, or there's going to be petitioning for rezoning?
It doesn't have any impact on the zoning whatsoever, and unless, I mean, that does, if somebody wanted to come in and buy residential property and come and ask to rezone it to neighborhood commercial because they have this great business venture in mind, the fact that the DDA exists or doesn't exist doesn't make any difference to that.
So we could still
request.
deny a rezoning request?
It doesn't change anything
Okay.
to do with zoning.
Correct.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
My quandary is so it seems like we're gonna go through these hoops, and the board still hasn't decided if we're going to have a DDA or not a DDA.
Well, that's true. You have not decided, and even after the public hearing, you may choose
Right.
not to decide at that point in time.
And even after we decide, we may not get it because
Right.
we have to go to the county.
And
I'm
yeah,
learning.
the problem is that it involves, first of all, it involves a lot of homeowners, so you want to get their input. You're going to want to thoroughly consider this on your end. And then we also, we have obligations to notify the county of what we're thinking and what we're planning in broad strokes, and we want their input as well. And so if any one of those three ingredients flops, then you may just pull the plug at that time. You may get to the public hearing, you may hear from everybody, you may want to take some time to consider it. Because it isn't just a matter of just simply laying this map over this property and considering that tax money and we're good to go. There are trade-offs, and we're going to have to consider those in a lot of detail.
Yep.
But this is just the first. This is the first introductory step. And the other thing we want to do is because we want to meet these, there are other timelines that happen as well. For example, if we decide to create this district, we're then going to have to consider an ordinance. But we're going to have to send out notice. We got to wait for 60 days to find out what the taxing entities feel, how they feel about it, if they're in or they're out. So we're really, I mean, even if we went ripping along, we're still going to be at about 120 to 150 day timeline at the best case scenario. But please know that at any point in time, if you want to slow the train down, we can certainly do that. Or if you want to take the train off the tracks, we can do that too.
Well, the other key to this is doing this now before development really begins. So, I mean, we do have a little bit of a time frame here that we're working with, and we also have to have the county get on board with this.
Right.
Which may take some work as well.
Saw yesterday, the Flint Township started their DDA yesterday. Did you see that in the
Yes, I did.
paper?
I didn't see it in the paper, but
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
They voted yesterday and they started their DDA.
Okay. There's actually several around the county. I mean,
Yeah, this
David's
isn't,
probably
it's not really revolutionary, but I think given the temperature of interest in that area was identified by the Planning Commission and Township Board in our latest revision to the master plan, I think, nearly identically that spot was considered our Tech Village district. So, but that area is starting to show a little potential for interest, and if we can fan the flames.
right? So we'll actually set the date at our meeting tomorrow, but it looks like the first Thursday in June may work for everyone. And we'll do some education maybe at our meeting later this month.
Right.
So, okay, that sounds like a good plan. Okay, operational issues. The board will consider a motion to approve an agreement between the Genesee County Road Commission and the Charter Township of Grand Blanc for the aggregate resurfacing of Reed Road west of West Middle School. This agreement authorizes the use of our 50/50 allocation funds. Mr. Lehman, any comment on that, or?
Yeah, we actually met with the road commission last week, this one, and to have a conversation about this. And just to bring the board kind of up to speed, you guys heard about the additional funds that were being issued from the legislature out to the road commissions for a quick shot in the arm for 2018's construction season. The allocation for us was $184,000, which would allow us to put a 2-inch cap on Cook Road between Saginaw and Holly, at least up to that corner where before it takes the break, because that's a newer road already. It costs about $200,000 to put a 2-inch overlay on 1 mile of road. We looked at various options throughout the community. Obviously, Pollock Road is too far gone to put an overlay on it. The same holds true for Wakefield. You know, we looked at McCandlish between Saginaw and Holly Road as a very good candidate for it as well. The issue there is that the application has already been in, and we believe it will be favorable that that will become a primary road, and we should hear back by, you know, possibly August. So we don't really want to take our allocation and point that towards McCandlish Road and then find out in August, right after we've done it, that it is now a primary road and would have qualified without our funding, and the road commission would have had to do, you know, was responsible for it anyway. So as we look through everything we had and the money that we had left on this, Reed Road is a trouble spot. We looked at what we had, and so far with our 50-50 allocation funds, we've allocated money to the roundabout, and that be spent out of 2018 funds. We looked at the amount we had left, and it looks like we can cover this without a problem. And the reason I tell you about the other $184,000 is that we don't have the dollar amount back yet. So even though we're asking you to approve the use of the allocation, the 50-50 funds, to do some additional aggregate on Reed Road, there is a potential that I may come back after, if you guys approve this, to say we need the actual money over on that Cook Road 2-inch overlay to complete the project. But we don't anticipate that. We think the cost is going to come in where it comes in. So I really would like you to consider that we move forward with this. If we had to change our minds to make sure that we get Cook Road completed, then that would just come to you, and we'll know the cost of what the Cook Road 2-inch overlay will be before this gets done on the Reed Road.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the superintendent. Can you be more specific, just than saying west of West Middle School? Can you give me a spot where it will start?
I don't have a map to give you, but I can certainly, Greg, if you'd step up.
Trustee Massey, it will start right after West Middle School. It turns to gravel. Yep. Goes past
I'm familiar with that.
Park entrance, and
Yeah.
it dead ends to a cul-de-sac at I-475.
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
portion from where it turns to gravel west of West Middle School to that cul-de-sac will be receive aggregate.
Well, I guess what I'm asking the question, if I understand you correctly, you're saying after you pass West Middle School, it will start somewhere there.
Right after it turns to gravel. It's paved. Reed Road is a 55
Oh, okay,
mile.
you're only doing the
Yeah.
part that turns to gravel.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I
it's
thought that
paved
was-
up to West Middle School, 55-mile-an-hour zone, and then it turns to gravel.
And what they're talking about doing is bringing in 3 or 4 inches of gravel and
Yes,
doing
and
a
it-
complete overlay across the whole thing.
Right.
Now, I have
So
another
it'll still
question.
be gravel, just to be more serviceable, right?
Yes,
No
yes,
pavement.
because over time, erosion and
Winches
stuff,
of
you don't have aggregate down, it turns to mud and more
Right.
potholes and.
The reason I asked the question, you gave me the answer that I was thinking of. Now I move to my real question. My real question is there any damage to the road in front of the school, in the school area?
Is there currently any damage to it?
Yeah.
I don't know
I
the
didn't see it
classification
when I
of,
was there
Well, I think we should find that out
yesterday.
before we vote.
I think we need to know because we may have to do, I won't call them repairs now in front of the school.
Well, I know what they're proposing to do. This comes from the road commission and their dollar amount of what it's going to take. And that's just really, it's to go in, and it's not like we haven't done this before and you have to do it periodically. We've done it to McQueen, we've done it to other gravel roads, where we just have to come in and put that overlay of new gravel over it because it just disintegrates, it gets pounded into the clay and mud, road surface, and disappears. All this is doing is, in fact, we got a complaint today that Mr. Boggs handled for us from a concerned resident about the layers of dust that are coming off of Reed Road. What we're doing with this is for $13,000 or whatever it is putting a new gravel surface over it that will keep it from being as bad as it is currently.
I understand that part, but I just want to make sure that we take in consideration anything in the front of the school.
Well, this project isn't going to do any paving of any sort,
No,
so
there's no
believe me,
paving. The cost of paving is a lot more than $13,000 worth of.
we've got another school over in, what is it, they're on the east side,
Meyer.
Meyer,
Rushmore Path.
that the residents over there would like to have the school pay for paving their street in front of the school, but that's not going to happen either. But
the additional work would have to, you'll have to find the
funding
funds
for it
from the general fund to put in there because this would tap out our 50/50 allocation funds.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Other than that, we'll talk about what we're hearing from the community. We'll go through some of our reports and adjourn the meeting. Mr. Lehman, I know that do you have anything that you would like to bring up tonight, or?
I'll give you a brief update on a couple of things. We've been working with the Flint Genesee Chamber as part of being able to market some of the properties around. Now, we don't own any of the properties, but it's just a way for us to make sure that when investors are looking through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation in this Michigan Zoom map for properties that are available, we're working with them to provide them with information on available properties. So anyone who's hearing this, if you own large tracts of land that are, and you'd like to have help from the MEDC or the Flint Genesee Chamber, certainly let us know, and we'll help get those things out there. But it's good that we've got some economic development folks working in our favor. I think it's good that we're back up on, you guys will take and do the official ceremonial swearing in of the new firefighter tomorrow evening. I think that's awesome that we're finally back up to full strength. It's been at least over a year and a half, probably nearly 2 years closer, Bob, since we were at full strength in our firefighters with the full time. So we're glad that that process has moved forward. And our new this police officer started, he was in the onboarding process on Monday morning. I had the opportunity to chat with him, and we're excited about having him come on board with us as well. Just so the board knows, and email will go out, but I'll be leaving tomorrow morning. My daughter's graduating, my beautiful and talented daughter is graduating from the University of South Carolina on Saturday, so I'm heading out tomorrow morning. I will not be at the meeting tomorrow evening. I will be down there getting her prepped, her apartment cleaned, and waiting to watch her walk across the stage. So
Congratulations.
culmination of a lot of hard work, but she's a 4.0. Really proud of her to see her come across there.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations, Mr. Lehman.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Mr. Laddie, anything this evening?
No, I'll, if anybody has any questions for me tomorrow night, I will be here.
Okay.
I have a quick question for Attorney Laddie and to the superintendent. How are we doing on our new course of action for hiring? Through with the board and the budget.
Our policy for hiring.
The policy still remains at the Aaron Graves with our Bodman, our labor council, and I gave him a reprieve because he's in labor negotiations with another client, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the policy as written, but it will be back before you as soon as we get it back from Bodman.
Yes.
Make a motion to.
Well, Mr. Chair, one important issue, the backup traffic that we're seeing now at Emory Road and Grand Blanc Road.
Okay. Well, Mr. Massey's bringing up that Embry Road, as Chief probably knows, is backing up again. I don't know if it's due to the construction on Fenton Road, probably is. but it's backing up at about 4 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon. I don't know if there's anything we can do for traffic alleviation over there, or backups or not, but. Okay.
Well, they said it was better, they did say they did the worst.
Yeah, it's a tough corner because your officers, if they're standing out there in that intersection, are encountering traffic
You'd be
coming
having
off,
to hire some more.
coming off Dort Highway at,
60 miles.
Yeah, at least 60 miles an hour, if not, more.
Don't want them injured out there, and they would be.
So you got them coming in all directions at that intersection, so. Okay. With
So
that, there's a
I'd like to
motion.
make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
All those in favor? There's
Aye.
any opposed?
Me,
Hey, have fun.
That is a joke, Mr. Thomas, or really?
We're really excited.
real,